Hello Tech Pros, episode 255.
People don't mind if you ask them for help. People ask me for help, I give it. I ask people for help all the time. I did not like doing that when I was early on in my recovery, but now I think we should all do it more when it's warranted.
Welcome to the podcast where we explore the opportunities, challenges, and anxieties that technical professionals and techpreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. This show is about the people behind technology and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com and about overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello Tech Pros, this is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Justin Constantine. Hey Justin, how's it going, man?
Thanks, Chad. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
You bet. I am super excited to talk to you today. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Justin Constantine is a former Marine and attorney and is now an inspirational speaker and leadership consultant. He survived a gunshot wound to the head while serving in Iraq, and he recently completed his first book, My Battlefield, Your Office, Leadership Lessons from the Front Lines. Justin, I want to say before we get started, thank you so much for your service to this country. I appreciate all the sacrifices that you and your colleagues and your family have all made to keep our country safe, and I really appreciate everything that you've given for us.
Well, thanks, Chad. I appreciate that, the warm welcome and you saying that. I've been extremely fortunate in my recovery. What I've learned over the last 10 years is people across America do care about our veterans and our service members, and it's been a big part of my recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine. I mean, not including the wound, right? Not including that, just the life that you guys go through, and all the sacrifices that you have to make, your family has to make in order to make it all happen. So just my heart goes out to you, my hat comes off to you, and I appreciate everything. So, you wrote a book, My Battlefield, Your Office, Leadership Lessons from the Front Lines. You're an inspirational speaker and leadership consultant. You know, we were chatting right before the podcast about there's a lot of technical professionals out there. All the folks listening in, right? They're software developers, they're server admins, they're database administrators. And I've had many of them approach me recently and say, Chad, all these leadership episodes, like, dude, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be the boss. I don't want to be the guy or gal in charge. I just want to kind of sit behind my computer, do my technical thing, and just let somebody else manage all the meetings and, check off all the to-do lists and all that kind of stuff. So do you have any inspirational messages for folks like that out there that maybe we can teach them it's not just about being the boss, but there's other aspects to leadership?
Yeah, well, thanks. And I mean, my thoughts on that is that, yes, every company has a CEO, but he or she is not the only leader by any stretch of imagination. As we say in the Marine Corps, when two Marines are walking, one of them's in charge. And you can have small unit leadership, you can be a mid-level manager, you could have a much larger team. And so I understand that some folks, especially if you're introverted, just want to work on your little project and then go home and not be in charge of anyone or a budget or gear or inventory or stuff like that. But that's just not the way. That's just not the way it works. And if you get good at what you do, people are going to want to promote you. And over time, you're going to be in charge, at least nominally, be in charge of other folks. And that's why I wrote my book. It's aimed at mid-level managers who worked hard. And there's millions of people like this every year who work hard, who get promoted, but never learned how to lead people along the way. So I took what are some basic Marine Corps leadership principles and broke them down into 15 chapters in an easy-to-read fashion, where I hope that other folks who don't have the benefit of military service could kind of learn from my experience and help to be a better leader on an everyday basis. And I would just add on to that is 2 days ago, I was in Dallas, Texas, speaking at a conference for CIOs. And these are CIOs for major companies. In fact, the woman who's the CIO for Pepsi was the one who introduced me. And I talked for about 45 minutes about leadership and change and overcoming adversity. And even though they are very senior people there, they know that they have a lot more to learn about leadership. We all do. And even my brother, who he's a tech guy. He retired out of the Air Force. He did cybersecurity. Now he works for a firm in St. Louis. But everyone at some point becomes a leader, whether it's like your CIOs or just in charge of a small team or at your nonprofit or in your family or in your community group or wherever it is. So it's actually, I think, leaders are made, not born. And once you embrace that philosophy, you realize that there are some basic steps you can take to be a great leader.
Yeah, and I love what you pointed out there about when two Marines are walking, one of them's in charge. Like everything that we do, even here in my household, in the Bostic household, right, there's a boss, and I report to her on a daily basis, and she tells me what to do, and I try to get it done to the best of my ability, right? And then we have a little boss that kind of controls our sleeping schedule and school schedule and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I work for a lot of people, and I try to just lead these interviews, and so that's my leadership contribution here. But you know what, you nailed it when you said when you do really good work, regardless of what role you're in, regardless of what technology or what industry that you're in, when you do a great job, like people are going to want to promote you because they want to replicate that, and they're going to want to scale your skill set across the organization. And so sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we are either getting pushed into a management position or pushed into a leadership supervisor position, or all of a sudden we're there. Like we accepted this position, we're now a leader, and now what happens? Like what do I do from this day forward? What do you teach people or consult people about how to react in that situation when they're moving into a leadership position for the first time?
Well, I think there's some basic things that leaders have to think about, and I guess the first most important lesson that I learned in the Marine Corps is that taking care of the people around you has to be your number one priority. It's not the coding, it's not making sure everything is working correctly, but it's taking care of the people. And they really are your most precious asset. I know we hear that a lot and people kind of laugh, but in the Marine Corps, it can be a difference between life and death if you are or not taking care of the people around you. And I've seen that in Iraq, I've seen that in garrison here in the States, and I've seen it in the private sector too. You can tell the difference immediately when you walk into a company where people feel like they're treated well and they feel like they're valued as compared to a place where they don't feel that way. And so if you're new to leadership, I'm not saying you coddle people or kiss their butt, but taking care of them means making sure that, for instance, they're getting the pay they deserve, or they're getting the hours, their schedules that works best for them and the rest of the team. Maybe it means a flexible work schedule if that's an option. Maybe it means they get to voice their opinion at a weekly meeting, whatever it means in your industry or in your company. But taking care of people should be first on your mind.
Man, I love that. I completely, absolutely agree. But for some folks, like you said, that are a little bit introverted or a little bit uncomfortable in those situations, it can be a different situation where you're used to worrying about the data and the processes and the technology, and all of a sudden you're talking about touchy-feely stuff about, hey, is Justin going to be mad at me, or is Chad upset about his home life or whatever? That can be very uncomfortable. So how do you get people like really in that mindset where they're taking care of their people to the best of their ability?
Well, I think, leadership is kind of like what Malcolm Gladwell talked about. You have to do something for 10,000 hours to be really good at it. Now, I don't say you have to be a leader for 10,000 hours before you're good, but certainly you're going to be a lot better once you do it that long. That being said, you can take the time to think deeply about what it means in your company to be a good leader. And you can use examples of people you've worked for who are really good, and you can also use examples of people who are really bad. And I've had both. I know we all have. And so it's not something that just happens, because nothing worth achieving just happens. You have to work at it. You have to read books on it. You have to listen to podcasts on it. You've got to talk. You have to develop mentors and people you can talk to. And it's also not a bad idea to seek feedback from people you trust. It could be a peer, or it could be a subordinate, but or someone who's above you. But you have to be actively seeking to improve yourself. And if you're introverted, you probably know you're introverted, and that's why you're uncomfortable talking to large groups or talking about personal feelings. certainly it can be tough at first. We often think that the people who are the loudest and the most extroverted, they're the best salesmen or women or the best leaders. But I'm rereading Daniel Pink's book, To Sell as Human, right now. He points out in there that no study supports that. That's just an assumption we make and carry forward. And so I think if you are introverted and you are more interested in the data and the tech, but now you're in a leadership position, you have to grin and bear it and embrace it. And before long, you're going to find out that you're probably pretty good at it because you put the time in to get good at it.
Yeah, it was absolutely unreal to me that I was good at it once I got into leadership. I resisted. I pushed back for years. I had 3 years. My boss was like, Chad, please, I need a number one. I need a number one. I'm like, I don't want to be your number one because I know that means a lot of meetings and a lot of administration. And I don't want to do that. And, honestly, I suffered with social anxiety disorder, and I had a lot of anxiety about just having one-on-one conversations, let alone group conversations and meetings and stuff like that. Sure. And so for me personally, it was a big thing to overcome. But then once I got into it and found that mentor, started reading those books, started getting the training, I discovered that, you know what, it's another skill set that once you start focusing on it, working on it, then you can improve like tremendously from the beginner stage into more of a intermediate learner on it.
Yeah, and there are lots of free resources or very cost-effective resources out there. And I'll use my brother as an example. He retired from the Air Force as a colonel. He studied math and computer science in college, and he did computers in the Air Force and cybersecurity. In high school, he was very introverted. I was a class president in my school. He was, getting great grades and applying to top quality schools. So we were very different. But after a few years in the Air Force and being an officer, soon he was asked to be the MC at different events. He really enjoyed it. He was totally fine getting up in front of talking to a lot of people. He was selected to be a general's aide because along with that leadership, his personality grew. He got a lot more comfortable talking with people, and they realized they could really trust him, and they got to know who he was. And so I think we're all capable of that. He obviously made a conscious decision to work on it.
Man, that's inspirational. That's very cool because I think a lot of people, I've actually talked to a friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago. He said, you know what, I've just kind of resigned myself to accept myself for who I am. I am who I am, and I can't change. I'm not going to change. And so, I should just kind of forget about this stuff. And I'm like, well, I respectfully disagree, right? Because I think it's just you've decided that you don't want to change and you don't see the value of changing. And if that's the case, that's cool, man. No judgment, no harsh feelings whatsoever. But you are absolutely capable of learning this new skill set, whether it be soft skills or whether it be communication or public speaking or podcasting or being an author or whatever it is you want to do. I truly believe that everyone has that in them. They just need to believe in it and focus on it and make it happen. Yeah,
Chad, I agree. There's no wrong decision. Whatever people decide, that's the right thing for them. And you're right. I'm not judging anyone either. However, life is always changing, and we have to be who we are right now because of a lot of things that happened to us in the past. We have a say and a choice in everything that happens to us going forward. And so if you want to be a CEO, well, there are steps you're going to have to take to do that. If you want to learn how to code, you have to do something about that. You're not stuck in time, and you're not a victim of circumstance forever. We all bump into challenges. We all face adversity, but there are certainly steps we can all take to move us past whatever it is that we're facing.
Wow. And speaking of adversity, dude, you've got one of the most incredible stories that I've ever heard, surviving a gunshot wound to the head while serving in Iraq. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened there and what you learned about yourself through the process?
Yeah, sure. It was actually just 10 years ago. It was October of 2006. As a Marine officer, I deployed to Iraq with, I'm a lawyer by background, although I don't do that anymore. I'm a recovering lawyer now. I don't practice law, but on active duty, I served as a criminal defense counsel and a criminal prosecutor But when I deployed, then I left active duty and joined the reserves. I deployed as what's called a civil affairs officer. So I was attached to an infantry battalion. I wasn't there in a legal capacity at all. And so in Iraq in 2006, it was very volatile, a lot of kinetic action going on. We were, as a civil affairs team leader, I was expected to develop contracts with the local Iraqis to help put them to work and help rebuild destroyed infrastructure. But because it was such a kinetic time and the insurgency was so powerful, there wasn't a whole lot of that in our area going on. Mm-hmm. And on October 18, 2006, we were doing what we did often. I was with the colonel and the rest of his team, and we were out checking on the Marines and making different stops out there. And we knew there was a sniper in the area because he had already killed a few of our Marines. We actually had some counter sniper teams out looking for him. But we got to an area, well, earlier in the day, I had noticed that the reporter who was with us was kind of standing very still and not moving around very much, which is terrible if a sniper may be targeting you, of course. And so we got to the last stop, and he was actually in the same vehicle as I was. We got out of the Humvee, we started walking away from it, and I said to him, hey, he told me this later. I said, hey, Jay, you need to move quicker here. Don't forget about that sniper. We don't want something to happen to you. He said that based on that, he immediately took a big step forward, and a split second later, a bullet came in right where his head had been and hit the wall in between us. Before I had a chance to react, the next round came in and hit me right behind my left ear, and it exploded out of my mouth, causing incredible damage. And, of course, I went down immediately. The Marines around me thought I'd been killed, and when the corpsman rolled me over, I wasn't breathing anymore. So.
Oh my gosh, that is such a harrowing story. I can't imagine being in that situation, and first of all, just being under gunfire and being in that environment where bad things can happen to anyone, but then being that target where you're the one hit and go down. So as you started recovering, the doctors are working on you. I'm sure you went through some surgeries and so forth. And when the moment struck you that you were going to live and you were going to be the survivor, what did you think? What were you feeling?
I wouldn't say I had just some flash of inspiration or anything like that, but I always knew I would get better for some reason. I didn't have thoughts of suicide. I didn't think this was permanent. A lot of that probably has to do with because Dahlia, who is then my girlfriend, now she's my wife, was there with me every day, which was incredible. I also have family support, and a lot of folks who I didn't know stepped up to reach out to me. But I do specifically remember one day in the shower when I was recovering, and I looked down, and I have big scars on my legs because in a couple of the first surgeries, the doctors had to take bones from my leg to use to reconstruct my upper and lower jaws because they were destroyed. So I've got big scars there, and my face, even I've had a couple of dozen surgeries, it's still very obvious that something happened. And so I guess I have a face for podcasts now. But I kind of looked at myself and just kind of had a little breakdown and just thought, wow, I'm disabled now. That is not something I ever had thought about before, of course. And I knew life was going to be very tough. But I also realized that, I survived something that should have killed me. I'm extremely fortunate to still be here. Just by virtue of being in America, my standard of living is higher than most people. I have people around me who care for me. I have a job when I'm ready to go back to work. And so while the physical rehab was tough, I also went to counseling for a year and a half for post-traumatic stress, which was very helpful. And so I just, for whatever reason, was able to concentrate on the positives around me. I've had plenty of challenges, and I don't always think positively, or I didn't before. I guess it's just so when I take time to think about short and long-term goals and where I want to go in life, that's able to help me focus on the positive and kind of remind myself that I'm only held back by as much as I allow myself to be held back.
And there's so much resiliency there in your spirit, dude. Gosh, I'm just in awed and honored to get to talk to you here because it's so motivational. I used to run this Motivation Monday program every Monday on the podcast, and you would be an excellent. I mean, this is a great blend of leadership and motivation together. So I can see why you're an inspirational speaker because you can light up the feels, dude. It feels great talking to you. So again, kudos for not just serving, right, but having that spirit where you want to thrive, where you want to survive, and you want to move forward and make things happen. I think there's a lot of people that just the day-to-day life and normal everyday circumstances without a huge big detrimental thing in their life is kind of crushing for some folks, right? And we're like, I don't want to be the boss. I can barely keep up with just my day-to-day activities and all the responsibilities and blah. I'm stressed out and dealing with it.
No, I understand that. Well, I will just say one thing I've learned during my recovery, and I focus on it more and more now, is to really have a structured lifestyle, and I want to lead a productive lifestyle, not where I'm just kind of like a pinball bouncing around by whatever happens, and maybe this stemmed from something I couldn't control, getting shot, and now I want to be in control as much as I can. But I focus on the things that are important to me. I spend time with my wife identifying our mutual goals. I have, as an entrepreneur, I have several different lines of business that I'm really trying to focus on fewer and fewer things and just do each of them really well. But there is something about living an intentional lifestyle as opposed to just worrying about what's in your email inbox. Because when you do put your time in to things, taking steps every day towards a goal, I believe, is what differentiates life's great achievers for those who really dream but never do.
Well, I love what you pointed out there about living that, being that pinball in the pinball machine versus having that structured lifestyle, and kind of tying it all the way back to the beginning of the conversation when you were talking about, sometimes you're in a position where you're doing a really good job and you're just kind of forced or asked to be put into a management position. And some folks resist that. Some folks take that. Yeah. How do we go about really identifying that perfect goal, that perfect lifestyle for us so that we don't end up being in that pinball position where we're just kind of being bounced around to different jobs, different positions, and some of them we like, some of them we hate?
Well, I mean, one easy technique, and I don't mean to trivialize this topic because it's very important on a personal level to probably everybody. But one easy technique that people employ is to say, what does a perfect day look like? What does 5 years from now, if I'm in a place where the exact perfect place where I want to be, what does that look like? And why is that perfect for me? How do I feel when I get out of bed that day? What is it that I work on? Now walk back. Now you take the time to answer those questions thoughtfully. Walk back to what it would take, some backward planning to get there. Because if you can't even answer what a perfect day is for you or how you want to spend your time, then you are going to be that pinball, because you haven't put the time in to decide what's best for you and your family. And that having that thought process or taking that time to do the exercise should be a fun thing to do. Should be something you enjoy doing, because you're thinking that, wow, what is a perfect life for me? How can I, let me be creative. How can I get there? So that's something I've done. I know where I want to go. I know where my wife and I want to go together. And so that's a simple technique I would recommend for your listeners, Chad.
Yeah, absolutely. And your partner, your spouse, your loved one, whoever's there with you in life, you absolutely have to have that joint conversation, because I've been kind of telling myself and telling some of my friends and even my wife, I really want the travel lifestyle. I want to have this podcast where I can work from anywhere. I can move around the world, and I can spend 3 months in Barcelona and 2 weeks in Bali, and just bounce all over the world. And last month, and as we're recording this, October of 2016, we got to spend a couple of different weeks on a couple of different cruise ships and travel around different parts of the Caribbean and the Gulf and so forth. And it was horrible. It was a miserable experience because, there's so much that goes into traveling when you have a family versus like traveling as just an individual kid or an individual guy or a couple or whatever.
Yeah,
and it was like, you know what? I want a home base. Now my wife and I have talked about it, and we just love our home base, and we want to optimize for a home base. But then, so we adjusted our goals, and it was something we thought would be great. We tested it out in like a minimum viable lifestyle over about a month period, and we said, you know what? That's not for us. Let's adjust and move on to the next goal.
Well, great. I mean, you figured it out, right? At least you identified that wasn't you were wrong. Maybe whenever you were last single, maybe that was something that was a good fit for you, but your priorities have changed since then. And so I thought, living in Hawaii, that would be great. Who wouldn't want to do that? Well, I've gone on vacation there, and I really liked it. And maybe some parts of Hawaii are great, but there are also challenges that come along with that lifestyle. So yeah, you really have to figure it out, and you don't get too many chances to do that. So I would take it seriously, like you did, and realize this isn't for me.
Cool, man. So now you are speaking of your lifestyle, you're an inspirational speaker, leadership consultant. What drove you to those business types, and what do you get out of it that you just can't turn back on?
Well, I enjoyed being a lawyer. As I mentioned, I was a lawyer for 15 years. I worked in the Marine Corps doing criminal defense and criminal prosecution, and then I worked for the federal government at Homeland Security and Department of Justice, and then my last job was with the FBI on the counterterrorism team. And I enjoyed those positions. I had a good paycheck, but I also started speaking on the side, not intentionally as a business. I just was invited, after I was injured, to speak at different Marine Corps events or law enforcement events. And then I started getting paid to do it, and I started to grow it. And at some point I said, wow, I really enjoy this. I believe I could be very successful at it. And so I got to the point where I retired from the Marine Corps. I was out of the reserves at the time. I also left my job at the FBI, and so I could start doing this full time. That was 3 years ago in 2013. And so I had started a business while I still had a paycheck coming in, which is, as an entrepreneur, that's a good way to start. And
Absolutely.
then, so you have to make sure you can sustain yourself and your family. But then, since then, I've spoken to dozens and dozens and dozens of companies, but a lot of them very, very big companies, Fortune 100 companies. Like in January, I'm speaking at 3M's national conference with Cisco, Microsoft, Humana, some big companies, and they enjoy listening about leadership and overcoming adversity and dealing with change. These are issues that I've been through and learned a lot about, but are very relevant in corporate America. And so I really enjoy that. And now in 2017, I'm expanding my platform to focus also on some business coaching. I've gone through a long certificate program for coaching, which took 7 or 8 months, and so I'm getting ready to expand there. I really enjoy this because I've been through something tough. I've learned some good lessons from it. I'm only here because so many people have helped me, and I feel like I have a lot to offer in exchange now or in return. And so I get a lot of personal satisfaction. I talk at events. I was just in Dallas 2 days ago, like I said, talking to the CIOs. I talked to probably 15 or 20 of them afterwards, whether it was about challenges they're going through in their lives or just people we both know or just what's going on. I really like that personal interaction with folks. So just like we're doing right now. So this is a great fit for me. I get to work from home. I can serve on the boards of different nonprofits. I started my own with a friend of mine. So I'm also doing a lot with veteran employment. I just created a desktop calendar for veterans and veterans in the military. It didn't exist before. So I'm doing lots of different things that I want to do, things I'm choosing to do because I want to use my time the way I want to.
Love it. Love it. Justin, before we go and wrap this up, do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience? Then please share the best way that we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Okay. I would say, especially for your audience, one lesson I learned during my recovery is that it's okay to ask for help and to lean on others for support. And so if some of your listeners sounds like they're a little hesitant to embrace leadership or to move to different managerial positions, people don't mind if you ask them for help. People ask me for help, I give it. I ask people for help all the time. I did not like doing that when I was early on in my recovery, but now I think we should all do it more when it's warranted. So that's my mantra for today. If people want to connect with me, my website is justinconstantine.com, and so you can learn more about me. I did a TED Talk last year. You can see that there. But LinkedIn, I like LinkedIn, of course, Facebook as well. Also, I encourage your listeners to look at my new URL, which is myveterancalendar.com, which is that product I just told you, that's really cool calendar that's a daily dose of motivation from different people in the military. So I hope some of your viewers check that out as well.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value your service to our country. I value your inspirational message to, show us that there's hope, there's life on the other side, there's direction that we can take. We aren't just pinballs bouncing around throughout life, and under circumstances, we can choose the life that we want to live. And I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to me today.
Sure, Chad. That you summed it up perfectly. So thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Tech Pros, if you are in a situation where you are bouncing around, you're not sure where you want to go next, dude, I feel you. I've got a couple of resources for you that might help in your circumstance. If you want to build your career and get it off the ground and get unstuck from wherever you are in your career, make that jump to light speed and get your career moving faster in a new direction, you can take my free audio and email course at hellotechpros.com/career. Or if you're thinking about starting your own business and going out, being an entrepreneur on your own, I've got another course for you at hellotechpros.com/start, as in start your first career. You've been listening to Justin Constantine, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/255. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If this episode helped you out in any way, please leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you thought. iTunes reviews helps our rankings, which helps us grow the Hello Tech Pros podcast to a broader audience, which helps more technical professionals and techpreneurs build their career, build their products, and build their businesses. If you are a subscriber and get repeat value out of this show, consider becoming a sponsor on Patreon. The information on this podcast is free to everyone, but I'm giving you the opportunity to pay for the value you get out of it, starting as little as $1 a month. Pledge your support today at patreon.com/hellotechpros or visit hellotechpros.com/sponsor.